I'm Ellis, here with Mr. Robert K. Get ready. Interviews coming your way. Sit back, get your notebook, get a pen, read some information that you need to know, get you some snacks. Interview starts now. You're running for Cook County Board of Commissioners, correct?
As I'm running for Cook County Board Commissioner in the 4th District. It's in the south, east side of Chicago and the southern suburbs, but it also covers an area up in the northern end of the district, which is Evergreen Park, which is Worth Township. Now the district starts on the south end at Lansing, Illinois, Calumet City, Illinois. It comes into Burnham Harbor. It goes into a few precincts in South Holland and Lansing. It comes into the city on the southeast side at the 10th Ward, all of the 10th Ward, 8th Ward, 7th Ward. It goes into a portion of the 6th Ward and the 9th Ward. It goes over into the 21st Ward, all of the 21st Ward except 7 precincts, I think. Yeah, only 7 precincts out of the 1st Ward that are not in the district. And the 18th Ward, there's only 1 precinct and 1 split precinct. And it goes over into Worth, Illinois, which is Evergreen Park. And there are a number of precincts in that area also.
This is why somebody you should know, because so for y'all right now, that's your area. He done spoke in your area, so remember his name.
Robert R. McKay. My punch number is, and mark numbers, they changed that to mark numbers instead of punch numbers, is 104. That's on the ballot as 104. Robert R. McKay, Cook County Commissioner, 4th District.
And election day is March 18th, so be prepared. You have a month to prepare. Hey, so sir, let's get into this interview.
Yes.
Veteran.
I'm a veteran U.S. Coast Guard. I served in Coast Guard from 1967 to 1971, and I went to Vietnam in 1970.
Wow. A lot of you viewers weren't even born. I wasn't even born then.
Oh yeah, still a baby.
Yes, sir. You saw a lot, man, coming up in those. You said the Coast Guard, and you went to Vietnam in the '70s. So that was a big transition, with segregation and drugs and the total of death that was brought up on over there.
In Vietnam?
Yes, sir.
Yes, well, Vietnam was a conflict. It was never declared a war. You know, many people say it's a Vietnam War, but it was never declared a war. And Congress does that.
Okay.
So the Vietnam conflict was to fight communism.
Okay.
And, you know, we'll leave that there for that, because, as I look back, reflect back, and you see we were wrong in some of those issues that we became involved in.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. While serving, was it a lot of segregation going on at the time, or was that dying down? Was the racism still going on?
There was racism, but the government itself was cleaning up much of its image with the attitudes by recruiting people, especially blacks, African descent, or we should say descendant of enslaved Africans, into the military. And the Coast Guard was not left out of that, although there weren't that many blacks in the Coast Guard. And I joined the Coast Guard. I was going to be drafted, and my father recommended the Coast Guard because when he was a young man and he was drafted into the Marine Corps, I think in '41, and he attempted to get into the Coast Guard, but they weren't allowing that many blacks in the Coast Guard.
Okay.
So he recommended that, and I did go for that. And I'm now a veteran.
Yes, sir. What advice do you have for the soldiers that's on their way home, for the soldiers that's over there, and for the future soldiers?
Well, the main thing for the main issues people in the military should be focused on is education. Now, and the military is more scientific now, more automated, computerized systems in the military, and that requires higher levels of education.
Okay.
So if you're involved in the sciences and mathematics and extensive readings, that will prepare you more for military service. However, you can avoid that if you're matriculating into college and becoming entrepreneurs. Those avenues are required at the same levels as the military.
Okay. The transition from vet to firefighter.
Well, in the Coast Guard, part of my job was to be a firefighter. I was a damage controlman, and it involved carpentry, plumbing, welding, bricklaying, pipe fitting. Those things are similar to the Navy, which is a Seabee, so we did not operate heavy equipment at the time I was in. But much of what the Seabee or damage control, they crossed over into their job qualifications and responsibilities.
They prepared you with a lot of skills. You just name at least 8, 9, 10 different fields. Right?
Well, yes, that was what I like that. I would rather have been a marine scientist, but I see more value in being the damage controlman in the service because it afforded me many of the skills that I can reflect or rely on now to look into the responsibilities with the county government and how when contracts are put out for bid, many of the aspects of building or construction or renovations in the county government requires some of that knowledge. And then when you understand that, you can better understand who's qualified to acquire some of the contracts that are lettered from the county system.
Wow. So when did you, so you're speaking on firefighters, so when did you make that transition? When did you start? What year exactly?
Well, the exam for the fire department in Chicago was given in 1974. I took that 1974. However, it was not called until 1978. It was in the summer of '74, and during that period, and after going back and understanding the history of why and what some of the time frames that were involved in becoming involved or becoming employed with the city in various civil service jobs.
Okay.
And I learned later that the city was under 3 consent decrees in which they spoke to patriotism, racism, and nepotism. And once later I learned that the consent decrees were the Shackman that spoke to hiring and firing, political aspects of the job that did not require skilled labor or skilled knowledge for a position.
Okay.
Friends and families of politicians, neighbors of politicians would get a job, and that constituted political hiring because an average person, citizen from the street who applied for a position would not be considered because someone else who was closer to or who is closer to a politician would get hired for that position or positions in the government. However, Shackman in itself, Michael Shackman was an attorney who sued the city of Chicago, and he won the lawsuit. That's why they have the Shackman consent decree applied to the city, because they must abide by certain court orders ordered on the city in order to conduct their hiring, firing, promotions, and even for termination. There must be an outlined, detailed process of an explanation as to why a person was eliminated from a job, and especially when it comes down to the black community. Now, Richard M. Daley, Richard J. Daley. Richard J. Daley was the mayor at that time, and because he refused to hire the number of blacks required according to the affirmative action plan, and we'll get back to the affirmative action plan in a minute, but when Richard J. Daley refused to hire especially blacks who were qualified for jobs or who had applied for positions, he refused to do that. The federal government decided that they would not give the city its federal funding, required their allotted federal funds, because the city was not abiding by the consent decrees that were set up. That turned out to be Shackman, Albrecht, and Quinn's consent decrees, where the city was mandated to conduct hiring for blacks of African descent, promotions of on their jobs, and in fact it covered 5 categories: recruiting, testing, hiring, promoting, and retention. And any time there was blacks who were hired or who were asked to take an exam, and it was followed by the courts, by those consent decrees. But somehow the city worked around that, and we still do not have the required hiring of from our communities that was mandated by the courts.
Wow. It's history.
So, in fact, I spent a month in Washington, D.C. There was a group of people who took an exam back for the fire department in 1995. Once they passed the exam, and the exam was, the list was constructed from the number of people who passed, and they didn't expect the number of blacks to pass as they did. So they went back against the consent decrees and created categories, which was not part of the hiring plan for the city. Now, the city, once they found that so many blacks had passed the exam, they said, well, we're going to create categories. It was highly qualified, qualified, and not qualified. That was not part of the hiring plan in the city of Chicago. So someone sued the city. Well, they filed a complaint with EEOC, and then they issued a right to sue letter. And once the right to sue letter was issued, it went into a lawsuit. They sued the city, won the lawsuit. The city appealed the lawsuit, and the case was dropped after, I think, the attorneys representing the applicants did not file some paperwork on time, and the court, or the judge in this particular court, had it thrown out, and he dismissed it. So from that point on, the case was dead until I came in, and me and another young lady, Tony Stiff, we came in and we garnered 86 complaints of the people who had taken the exam, and that was in 2009. In 2009, June, we drove it to Washington, D.C. 86 complaints were filed with the EEOC, the Department of Labor, the Justice Department, and one copy went to the Supreme Court. And the Supreme Court received that in, I think, January of 2010. They ruled on it in late in the spring of 2010, and they decided that this case was still open, so they sent it back to the 7th Circuit Court of Appeals here in Chicago and told them that the case was still good. So that's where the 111 people who were recently hired on the fire department came out of their class.
I thank you for that. If they didn't thank you, I thank you.
Well, quite welcome. And we'll do it again. However, based on we did some calculations. Now, everyone in that case was equally harmed. And 111 people received the job. Of the 111, only, I think, 82 or 86 passed. Everyone completed the program. Everyone did not complete the program. Now, they were all equally harmed. Out of 6,000 people applicants who took the exam and passed it, 111 received the job with 13 years seniority. And the remainder, I think, received a check for about $9,000 or $10,000. And from that, they took out the income tax for the state and the federal government. So I think their checks, their compensation was somewhere around $6,000 to $7,000. And compared to receiving a job with seniority of 13 years, which can constitute up to equal up to hundreds of thousands of dollars, because they only need to work 7 years and retire. Because you're required to work 20 years and you get a pension.
Okay.
So,
Your activists were starting early. You was in it.
well, yeah, that was well,
That was later into it.
it was later into it, but then still, I mean, with the activist part, we're all activists for that matter. I mean, you're here, you're recording this, so you're an activist in a sense. We have had media people, we've had instructors, professors, teachers. We're all activists. You know, we're fighting for the rights of the people. When we should be represented, and our elected officials should be representing us and fighting for our just due, but that doesn't always happen. That's why they need to be replaced.
Yes, sir.
And young people like you need to step in and take up some of that, take that role on, so we can begin to move forward.
I know. I'll argue with you on that.
Okay.
32 years in the firefighter. As a firefighter,
Yes.
you've seen a lot,
Seen a lot.
done a lot.
Yes.
Can you give the viewers an insight on how much work that firefighters go through and the difference they make and the efforts they put forth to help people? And a lot of people don't really acknowledge, like, it takes a lot to do what you all done, what have you have done, and that the rest of the firefighters carrying on doing right now.
Well, yes, well, in the fire service, in any of your civil service jobs, you're hired to perform a service in the city or in the municipality in which you reside or work for. And the fire service, especially when you see people from your community and you work, because in the fire service it requires processes that we're trained for to protect the citizens in the community or in the cities. Now, for example, if there's a fire in your apartment or your home, in the kitchen, and you want to maintain, you serve to protect that area and protect the home. You know, you're going in, and many times you'll see a firefighter going into a building and break windows. And in training, we're taught to raise windows or lower windows without breaking them, so to preserve the property as best we can.
Okay.
And when you see people damaging or going in unnecessarily, breaking windows out when they could have been raised or lowered to allow ventilation to come in, or allow ventilation to take smoke out of a structure that has been involved in a fire, or to relieve the smoke from the building, you know, to reduce the hazard of smoke inhalation.
Yeah.
That in some communities they do that. They'll cover the furniture in a dining room with a tarpaulin to prevent water damage. Other communities, when you have firefighters who don't work in those communities, will come in, they'll knock furniture over and break televisions, and do these sort of things that are damaging. Although the insurance company, if you have insurance, will take care of that, but that can reduce the insurance coverage or damage or payouts for a property that has been unnecessarily damaged by reckless individuals.
The growth in African Americans in the fire department. Now you said that was 2010 when you guys won that?
That was 2000, that was 2010, yes.
So 4 years later, when you was basically retiring, did you see the growth of more African Americans or just the same number?
From what I've seen, it's gone beyond I went in 1978. It's gone back below that.
Mm.
Because according to, now when the firefighters went on strike in 1980, it was for a contract.
Okay.
And when the contract was signed in 1980 and completed, they required the process called equal opportunity employment. And when that is in the contract. And equal opportunity employment speaks to a certain percentage of ethnicities being hired on the fire department, and perhaps all civil service jobs in the city of Chicago, but specifically with the fire department, it requires that 45% of the hirees or employment with the fire department be blacks of African descent or Hispanics.
Okay.
And what we've seen is that of the 45%, it's less than half of what should be on the department now.
Mm.
Because I think the year before last, in 2012, there was a group who went before the union to lobby, to encourage them to require the city hold off on the chief's exam.
Okay.
Because there weren't enough blacks or Hispanics who were captains.
For me and the other viewers who don't understand, what is the chief?
The chief is is upper management in the fire departments. He's a supervisor. He's a manager of a district and within the fire service.
Okay.
The chief, a battalion chief, works as a district manager. You know, relate that to the corporate structure.
Gotcha.
Now, the chief's exam was being given, I think, in 2012. And I was away from the fire department. Someone asked me to go down to the union to sit in on a conversation
Okay.
that representatives were going to have with the union to encourage them to get the city to hold off and give them the chief's exam, because in order to take the chief's exam, you must be a captain. And there weren't enough captains who were black or Hispanic to take the exam, and there were people on the list to be promoted. And they wanted the city to hold off until more people were promoted to captain in order to qualify to take the chief's exam.
Okay.
And when I was there, I listened to the conversation, but the city had already set a date, and the union, I think, was going to go against that date to hold up the exam so that these people could be promoted in order to take the exam, take the chief's exam. So I picked up a copy of the contract, which spelled out the percentages. I asked how many people are employed on the fire department, so they gave me a figure, and I'm looking at it and asked how many blacks are employed. And when I did the calculations, there were less than half, less than the 30% that's in the contract. Because well, everyone refers to it as Appendix G. That's the area where the equal opportunity is located in the contract. And they say we're not abiding by Appendix G. And Appendix G, which is again equal opportunity employment, which spoke to blacks being equally hired along with the Hispanics. The Hispanics, I think, the equal employment opportunity clause speaks to 15% Hispanic being hired. So it was less than half of them. I think it was like 7%. Mm-hmm. So when they are not abiding by their contract, and the city's under the Shackman, Quinn, and Albrecht consent decrees, and the city, those have to remain there mm-hmm. until they comply with them, and they have not complied with them yet. Mm-hmm. And at this point, we're looking at perhaps someone taking this back into court to get the city to meet its quota, and meet its standards according to the contract.
So to make that happen, what would really need to be done?
Well, there needs to be an activist process from the community. The community needs to stand up and say, we're not being equally employed because this is mandated by a court order. Now, when you see activism working, for example, the DREAM Act, are you familiar with the DREAM Act?
I've heard of it.
Okay, the DREAM Act is a process where children of undocumented citizens
Okay.
can go to school from preschool up to graduate school free.
Wow.
That's only one part of the DREAM Act. Now, the city was shut down, and it happened across the country, but in Chicago, 400,000 people, Hispanics, they say undocumented people also, marched from west on Ashland Avenue through downtown about 6 or 7 years ago.
I think I remember that.
Yeah, so that happened. And after that, not long after that, because that spoke volumes to the elected officials. Now, these are votes that are activists out here that we have to listen to. Although, and when you're undocumented, you're not registered to vote, but then they're mixed in with people who are registered to vote. So, and they're supporting that. So so that is what needs to happen with this firefighter or the city employment issue. It's the city of Chicago who's still violating these consent decrees.
And we just letting that happen.
Just allow it to happen because we're so distracted with other issues, not focused on the main process of our existence within these communities, and we allow these things to go on when we don't act on them.
It's time to step up.
Most certainly it's time to step up.
He just basically, you've been paying attention, you hear what the man said, it's time to step up. We gotta do our part. Director at Providence, though, safety director.
Safety director, yes. Well, it started at Providence when we opened. Providence Hospital was acquired by the county in 1992.
Okay.
And I don't recall, I think it was like for $1. But it cost over $61 million to renovate Providence because it had been closed for, I think, 7 years or 5 years. And they brought Providence and it opened. The first patient was brought in on August 17, 1993.
Okay.
After it was acquired from HUD, I believe. And then it was renovated and opened. And during that period, they were planning the new county hospital, which is now Stroger Hospital.
Okay.
And the hospital escalated up to where it was a 232 bed hospital. And they was in the early 2000s, I know the hospital was bringing revenue from the billing department up to $68 million annually, where I believe it cost around $24 million annually to operate the hospital itself.
Wow.
And Providence currently is being downsized to a clinic, and it was holding its own. It was bringing in revenue. It was bringing in the billing department was bringing in. I think one year it went up to over $81 million in revenue brought in the previous year. And from that point, it was decided that Providence was doing too well, too good. So they decided that we want to shut it down. They started to downsize it by informing the doctors to stop billing the patients at Providence. And they reduced the beds. The number of beds is now down to 25 beds. They stopped the ambulances from going into the emergency room about 3 years ago. And Providence was supposed to fade away, but too many people were walking in there to justify shutting it down. So at this point now, Providence Hospital is not budgeted beyond 2015, and it's is scheduled to be a clinic from now until the point where it's gonna be shuttered.
Wow. I remember seeing probably it's around 51st, correct?
Exactly.
Right off
51st, around 500 East 51st Street,
Yeah.
across the street from Washington Park, Diet School.
Diet, right across the street from it. I know you're
Right.
talking about. Yeah, I remember we used to drive past it. It's right outside of Hyde Park. It's
Yes.
right there. I
Right.
exactly know what you're talking about.
Yes.
That's crazy.
Now, pardon me, my platform, one of my campaign issues is to bring Provident back up, because it was earning the revenue, contributing positively to the county budget. It was ample emergency room, it was stabilized patients, although it was not a trauma center then, because we did have a trauma center over at University of Chicago.
Okay.
And the University of Chicago out of the general trauma care and allowed only adolescents to come in as trauma victims. It's up to age 16. And beyond that, sometimes a victim must travel up to 18 miles to a trauma center.
Why is that?
Well, there are 6 trauma centers in the city of Chicago. When trauma first came in 1966, it was started at Cook County Hospital. It came out of the battlefields of Korea.
The old Cook County.
The old Cook County.
I read that there.
Right. Well, you know, I don't know if you've ever looked at the TV series MASH.
Yes.
But that's how trauma the idea of trauma came in through that
Okay.
that program, serving the troops on the battlefield. You know, they needed immediate care, so they took the emergency rooms, the surgery centers to the battlefield.
Mm-hmm. In the tents.
And the tents, right. So, in fact, when the trauma center started at the old county building, I think it was in the physician's cafeteria. So it was set up in that fashion. It was makeshift, but it worked for better than it was before they had any kind of emergency care on that level.
Gotcha. They may do.
Right, they may do. And then it was improved, and then that spread throughout the country and perhaps throughout the world. Because then you would have physicians who would come here to train at the county hospital. This was an ideal setting because of the kinds of trauma that was going through. But the trauma centers now are located in the periphery of Chicago. There's 6 in the Chicagoland area, and there's some that are located outside of the Chicago boundaries.
Mm. That's trauma is one of your focus on this campaign. Right?
Yes, it is, because I'm looking at the zip codes in which response times for EMS coming in. The example 60633, as far south side of Chicago. Sometimes response times can be over 30 minutes, and optimal response time should be 20 minutes or less. In the area where we are now, in the zip code where we are located, it's sometimes 9 to 10 minutes. So you see the contrast in response time. That means life or death. And you have that travel period going from one point to the trauma center.
Mm. Speaking on the campaign, just a little insight on campaign. How's it going so far?
The campaign is moving along. My information getting out there. My issues are being distributed in the communities door to door. One of the pitfalls is that way, raising campaign funds.
Okay.
Can be difficult. And that's the phase I'm doing now, is raising campaign funds to get these issues.
How the fundraisers?
How the fundraisers?
Yeah.
I'm sorry. The fundraisers, well, I've had one so far, and it did bring in a few dollars.
Good. Your focus for the when you do get your seat,
Yes.
so when you do get your seat,
Yes.
Where are your focus? 'Cause I remember we talked before we got on the camera, you was focusing on creating, jobs for the youth. Can you elaborate on that a little bit?
Well, economic development is one of the issues on the platform on my campaign to bring in jobs in the community, because much of the fourth district is thriving, because you have major portions of the fourth district that are bankrupt, and we need to get those balanced so that the jobs can come in. And I'm looking at one area with the forest preserve and creating a food production with agriculture. Now, the forest preserve has up to nearly 69,000 acres in Cook County. And we know that, and I've learned recently that you can grow 3 million pounds of food on 1 acre of land in a year. You can produce that much food. And I'm looking at the process of developing or having land, an agricultural process brought into the county through the forest preserve and supplying food to county departments. The Cook County Jail can be serviced through this forest preserve and through this agricultural initiative. The hospitals can be serviced through this process also. Now, there's another agency with the department the county has created within the last 2 years, the Cook County Land Bank Authority, which receives blighted properties or vacant land and turn it over to developers or develop that property for commercial use or for its county use. And the job market for agriculture can be developed into bringing youth in, training programs, and rehabbing structures that are blighted that the city may, the county may acquire through its land bank authority.
You got some great things that's basically coming that you put in motion, and that sounds great. You got my vote. You had my vote before we even started. But
Okay.
I hope don't forget to vote for this guy.
Robert R. McKay, punch number or mark number 104.
Getting to that forest preserve, I think that'll be good. Not even if you're not the forest preserve, we get some land and we start producing our own, and that's good. Even if we, you bringing the youth in, that's great because they're the future, and a lot of youth don't really know about farming. They don't really know about planting. Some of them do. Some of them, we had grandparents or older aunts, and I know you from the era that you had grandparents, that you probably traveled to the south or even done it yourself in the backyard.
Yes.
So that'd be even great to do for the kids to do. Maybe program. I know they do stuff in the summer, so that'd be perfect. They give them something that keep them off the street. Smith is doing something positive. So.
Well, absolutely. And another area we're looking at, and the county does not have anything to do with the school board.
Okay.
However, I do support an elected school board. Now, when I look at how the county jail is overpopulated, and with nonviolent crime issues, there was a proposal put out that the county should go into the bail bondsman business by providing a bond to people who can't afford to they would have to, I guess, turn over some property or give us some assets in order to have the county bond them out of jail. Now, I would like to see a I-bond be issued to nonviolent crimes, people who are arrested for blue-collar issues or white-collar issues that
makes sense.
That are not violent, doesn't involve a weapon or someone being injured or killed.
Yeah, makes perfectly sense.
Right.
It's not a new day, but the environment, the area, everything is growing. So these new ideas and these new plans that you have, they all make sense. And I see this stuff basically happening in the future. If not, I think it's time, the time of sticking to the old, the regular blueprint is really not. You're seeing people doing the same thing over and over. But what you're saying, you're stating we're producing product, creating more jobs, helping the youth, working out situations with trauma, helping people. That's saving people's lives right there. In the county jail, them are some big things. I don't know if you already know like what this man is really saying. He's on a mission.
Also protecting the environment. No, we have issues where on the southeast side of Chicago, in the 10th Ward, there's a hazardous material called pet coke, PETCOKE. And it's a mound of, and perhaps mounds of tar, powdered tar. It's a petroleum byproduct that's blowing into the environment, it's blowing into the air, it's blowing into people's homes, getting into their yards, and blowing into the waterways. But because it's not contained and it has not been properly licensed to be in the area. Because I've reviewed the data and the material safety data sheets on this material, and it says it has this material, but some people are saying, it's not that hazardous, but then they wouldn't want it in their community. The people who have it there, who have placed it on that site, are not that concerned about protecting the environment or the inhabitants or the citizens within the 10th Ward.
Do you think the community really knows how deadly that chemical is?
No, the community only can go by what, well, the ones who are affected, they understand it because there have been complaints of respiratory issues. Some people may have been affected more seriously than has been reported. That remains to be seen. So until there's a thorough investigation of the effects of this on the community and on the inhabitants and on the environment, we won't know until that research has been released.
So what should the viewers, the community do to basically make an effort to do something, to do their part until you get to where you need to be to handle it? What should they do to basically get rid of this chemical or get it out of their neighborhood?
Or have it properly contained.
Yes.
They need to get with their elected officials, their aldermen, their state rep, the county commissioners, and even their congressman who resides in the area, because when it gets into the waterways, that's a federal issue also, along with EPA. But the state of Illinois has its own agencies, which are not adequate because many times they're underfunded to go out and conduct the investigations or to do the research in order to inform the public as to the dangers in which they are existing and in order to force the companies who brought it there to clean it up.
It's not hard to find these people. All you gotta do is Google 311, something. Let's get this in motion. The campaign.
The campaign.
Your number.
My number is 104. Robert R. McKay. I'm on the ballot for Cook County Commissioner, 4th District, and that resides in the southeast side of Chicago, in the southern suburbs just below Chicago, on the east side. Lansing, Illinois, Calumet City, Burnham, Dalton, South Holland, 10th Ward, 8th, 7th, 6th, 9th, 21st, 18th Ward, and also Evergreen Park, which is Worth Township.
That's a lot of y'all that he named just in the first half. So do your part. This the guy that you need to know who we need to put in position to make these things work, to better ourselves in the future. Where can people reach you if they want to make a donation or if they want to support you or any way? How can they contact you?
Okay, my direct phone number now is 312-343-4337. I have an email address. It's rrmckay@yahoo.com. And my office is located at 353 West 95th Street. That's adjacent to Trinity Church on 95th Street. In fact, it's across the street on the south side of the street, but on the east side of the tracks. Trinity is located on the west side of the tracks. We're right there on the south side of Chicago.
Election Day is March 18th. Anything you would like to close out with or go over your main objectives again for the people?
Well, I'd like to say for the citizens in Chicago, on the south side, especially in the 4th District of Cook County, we'd like to have better healthcare service and better emergency services provided to you. And that can be done by voting for me, because I will be advocating to get the trauma center on the south side of Chicago. And preferably at Providence Hospital, but there are other locations where they can be placed. So, because trauma it comes from automobile crashes, gunshots, comes from regular accidents, from people falling, heart attacks. They tell you if you are suffering a stroke, sometimes you can prevent a stroke from being as serious as a severe stroke or even a heart attack by getting to the emergency room as soon as possible. And sometimes that requires minutes. And then sometimes when you are suffering a stroke or heart attack, you can remain conscious long enough to get help, and also you may remain conscious long enough to get yourself to the emergency room. So minutes count. When you do not have a trauma center in your immediate vicinity, it can be devastating to you.
Jumping in closing. Silver Star Banner Award.
The Silver Star Banner Award is an award given by the Cook County Board, and I did receive the Silver Star Banner, I think in 2010, 2 years ago, and it was awarded in the county board chambers by the Cook County Commissioners and the County Board President, Tony Preckwinkle.
Congratulations.
Thank you very much. And that Silver Star Banner Award was given to Vietnam veterans who were injured. I'm a disabled veteran and I'm suffering from some issues from Vietnam, Agent Orange, and some other hazardous material related issues that I was exposed to in the war.
Gotcha. How did you feel when you received this award? Because this award is, I did some research, and it's not given to a lot of people.
No, it's not given to a lot of people. Like what I mentioned a minute ago, it's awarded to disabled veterans who were injured, and many of them do not choose to come forward. Many times a veteran, once he's been discharged, is disenchanted with some of the services that have not been provided through the VA, through continuous care when it is needed. And many times it's been denied, but it takes an effort, and I'm also fighting with that, and being an activist with the VA system, because we look at how in Illinois, it's 49th out of the 50 states in taking care of its veterans. And I think it's behind Puerto Rico in that matter.
Wow. In closing, sir, I want you to look into those viewers' eyes and speak to the youth, the veterans, future firefighters and firefighters that's on their way to retirement. And just the people in general. Any inspiring words or encouragement? And okay, the floor is yours.
Well, I'd like to say to the community that we, to the youth, that we prepare ourselves better than we have done to this point, because I see that this world is globally focused. World that we're involved in now is more scientific in its education. It's more focused in providing the kinds of education that is needed to matriculate on up through becoming an entrepreneur, becoming a professional, or even if you're going to be involved in the military, they're requiring more skilled and more highly educated people to perform military duties. So if you choose that route, education is the key in the beginning, matriculating on up through upper levels in life. So that is my main message, is that we prepare ourselves. Everyone can do that. And where you're not getting balanced education, there needs to be activism moving towards getting those kinds of educational tools and courses in our schools that are not providing it. We know that college preparatory schools do get it, magnet schools do get it, but the general population schools are not getting the kinds of education or balanced information to move forward and to become more involved in our society, and so that we can become qualified to get contracts with the city of Chicago, the federal government, or Cook County, that we are provided the education necessary to prepare ourselves. The education necessary to get us into areas where we become bonded, certified, so that we're qualified to do anything that we see major construction sites performing.
Robert McKay. Election day is March 18th. Primary election. Cook County Sheriff Board of Commissioners. Place your vote. Your number again, sir?
104 on the ballot, 104, Robert R. McKay.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
You have to do a lot of editing with this.
I'm Ellis. This has been your one-on-one. Thank you.